So Bros Network proudly brings to you two friends reunite coast to coast to phone it in on history, the creepy and the bizarre, lifestyle and travel, psychological and sociological phenomena. Well, pretty much anything. This is Phone It In on the So Bros Network.
So Bros Nation, welcome back for another episode of Phone It In right here on the So Bros Network. Mine's right, ass is tight as we tackle episode whatever this is. I forgot to look before we started recording, but we're in the 30s somewhere, episode 30 something. I'm your host for Phone It In, the EIC at SoBrosNetwork.com, big natural Stoney Keeley. You can follow me on Twitter at Stoney Keeley. Follow us collectively at So Bros Network on all major social media platforms. Really excited to talk about Dodge City, Kansas today. But you guys know I couldn't do it without my co-host for Phone It In, the star of the show herself, the cryptid queen, Rooster. Rooster, how you doing today?
Hi. I'm sleepy.
Sleepy?
Yeah.
Are you not sleeping?
No, well, I never sleep well.
Yeah, I don't sleep well either, but I'm on a particularly rough sleep night too. I woke up and there's like a foot in between the mattress and the headboard, and I'm a stomach sleeper that like I have to wrap up and stuff. I have to be covered on all sides to peacefully sleep. And I kept waking up with my face hanging like in between the mattress and the wall. So that's why I didn't sleep.
Why is there so much space between the mattress and the headboard, Stoney?
Well, I don't think I can disclose that on this podcast.
Okay.
There might have been some activity that led to such a condition that I didn't notice until it was too late. I was trying to sleep. Nonetheless, feeling pretty good today otherwise. So
yeah.
Hopefully talking about Dodge City, Kansas will wake you up. But before we dive into it, remind our listeners of where they can find you on social
God
media.
Damn it. Fuck, I forgot. Okay. I meant to look this up too, because I don't know why I just haven't been remembering lately. Okay. At Sobro Rooster on Twitter, and then Rooster Chase
on Instagram. There we go. We got it. I am pumped to talk about Dodge City for a couple of reasons. One, I grew up with a bunch of cowboy shit in my house. My dad was a huge Western fan, and they decorated the house with all kinds of cowboy stuff. And I mean, now, like, my dad passed in 2014, and now I think my mother's at the point where she's just ready for something completely new. She's like, I'm so sick of all this cowboy shit around the house. Let's redecorate. So for like 30 years, I grew up with all this stuff, like the horseshoes and the gun holsters and the 6-shooters and all that stuff, just, hanging out. My dad had a little like shadow box of old sheriff badges and stuff hanging on the wall. I always thought about the movies like Tombstone and Maverick and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of nostalgia there for me, but also Dodge City is a really interesting place because in its heyday, I mean, it was basically like Las Vegas back in the Wild Wild West. Anything goes. There was all kinds of debauchery there. It was a popular destination. And then over time, it just never really grew. It never really amounted to anything. And we'll get into that a little bit on this show, but I'm curious because that's why I'm stoked to talk about this, but I'm curious as to what got you on board with the idea of doing this show.
I like Western stuff.
Yeah.
Yep, just as simple as that. Just as simple as that. Yep.
Yeah, have we done any Western stuff on the show before?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think we have either. I mean, this feels like
San Francisco, if you want to count that.
yes, the first thing I think of when I think of country western. Yeah. No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So
Mm-mm.
this is a first for us. It's a first for us. So why don't you kick us off then? Let's just dive right into this thing.
Okay, so the area that would become Dodge City started as a territory of Mexico along the Santa Fe Trail.
Okay.
The Santa Fe Trail was a commercial highway that connected Missouri to New Mexico. Um, Fort Man was built by civilians in 1847 to help protect travelers along the trail. The fort quickly collapsed under attack by indigenous peoples. Only a year later or so. And in response, of course, the U.S. Army came to build their own Fort Atkinson because they're like, oh, well, we can't have just, you know, indigenous people fucking up our stuff. So we got to go out there and,
Right, right.
um, but then I guess a few years later, the army abandoned this fort for some reason and moved farther northeast. And then it wasn't until about 10 years later in 1865 when the American frontier wars in the West started heating up and the Army constructed Fort Dodge, again, I guess in that like old spot where it was before, to help protect the Santa Fe Trail again.
Okay, so they fire up the forts. Simple enough, right? To
Mm-hmm.
protect the area.
Mm-hmm.
When is it that
So,
oh, go ahead, sorry.
well, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, obviously you got a prime spot on a trail that lots of people are using. Um, and there's a fort there to keep people safe. So, I mean, naturally, people start showing up to
Yeah.
put down roots. I mean, it's seems obvious. So it's 1871 is the first official house by built by Henry Sittler. He built like a sod house, like just a fucking dirt house.
See, I want to know I want to know, can you explain the physics of how the dirt houses work?
No.
Okay. Cuz I'm fascinated by it. Like, is it just a big mound of dirt? It doesn't feel like, okay, this is what I struggle with. It doesn't feel like this is so long ago in history that they should have had to do this. But I guess, yeah, you did make a note there that said,
Yeah, there's no
ain't
trees.
no trees on the plains.
What are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
Can't they ship them in from the
I mean,
Pacific
I'm
Northwest?
sure that would be like a lot of money and very,
Just
you know.
put them on the next train from Seattle to Dodge City.
Okay. Well, no, so he made it out of dirt. I don't know I mean, I'm sure it's probably not that hard. I've
We
watched
should
Alone. I've seen people make houses out of fucking dirt and rocks. So,
we should try it sometime. The next time we get together, let's try and make a house out of dirt.
I don't know.
All right. Okay.
I mean, we probably could. We probably and it, you know what, it'd probably be not that hard with dirt in Michigan or dirt in Tennessee. I feel like would probably be easier than dirt from the plains.
But dirt in Tennessee is like half rock.
That's true.
So, I don't
That
know.
sounds easy. That sounds easy though. That's like basically cement. You're like halfway to cement.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. 'Cause I'm thinking like, how do you keep it all together? But if there's just enough mud in it, you just spit in it.
Hmm.
You just get you a handful, spit in it.
Look, spit and rocks. That's all you
Yeah.
need.
I might do it this weekend. Maybe we can start small. I'll just build a little outdoor dwelling for my cat. So Bucky can go hang out in the yard.
Yes, that sounds awesome.
I did not mean to completely derail the podcast here, but I just that's a curious note to me because I
I
just
mean, it's an experiment. I'm sure you can figure it out.
yeah yeah
Like an igloo with snow, but with dirt.
yeah yeah. It's about to be the
So
muddy season here anyway.
that's true. Yeah. Um, God. Okay, he built a sod house to keep his cow ranch conveniently near the trail and the Arkansas River. Um, there's a lot of buffalo hunting happening on the plains, so the house quickly became a stopping point for travelers and traders. People could see the potential with the Santa Fe Railroad coming too.
Mm-hmm.
So, just a year later, I almost said the first beer, the first bar was established for the fort soldiers and travelers. And by the time the railroad arrived in September of 1872, there was already a small town waiting.
I know that frontier life was fucking hard and terrible, but when I read stuff like this, when I hear you talk about stuff like this, it kind of sounds nice. I'm not gonna lie.
No,
To just go out
no.
and hunt buffalo, and they open up a bar, like you just go have you some whiskey, play some cards at night with your degenerate friends that might shoot you in the ditch later, but in the moment you're all having fun.
Did you ever see Hell on Wheels?
I No, but isn't it based off a book?
I don't know.
I think I read a book. No, I'm not. I'm confusing. I don't. This is pointless. What about Hell on Wheels?
Well, I mean, it kind of starts off just being about like them, building the railroad out west, and they kind of
Yeah.
have their little town that sort of is up, kind of goes around. Anyway, it's fucking awful. It's hell on wheels.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
dirty, it's terrible. Yeah, you're hunting buffalo, but like you're a white dude who's hunting buffalo, which means you're not really doing much with the buffalo other than taking their pelts, and then you have indigenous people trying to fucking kill you, as they should, because you're just killing all of the buffalo.
I was about to say you're hunting buffalo while something else is hunting you.
Hmm.
And every now and then
Yeah, when I was researching this, I was seeing like pictures of buffalo hunters being scalped, which, I'm fine with.
that's the move. That's the move.
Yeah,
Yeah. Don't don't get got. If you're going to do the crime, you got to pay the time, right?
that's right. That's right. The time as in death.
Also, like, a lot of people in Dodge City, maybe this is later on. I don't If I'm spoiling anything, stop me, but a lot of people, it was pretty common to go on cattle drives down to Texas, and it was a pretty treacherous trip that a lot of people would go on and not come back from.
I didn't go into that much detail on it, no.
Yeah. I
So
read a
no spoilers.
I read a book by Tom Clavin, so I would recommend
Hmm.
everybody check it out. It's just called Dodge City by Tom Clavin.
Yeah, and I think that's probably maybe also why you wanted to do this. But like, so if you have more details to throw in, there wasn't a lot really. It was kind of hard to look this one up. I did find some website, but it looked like a lot of bullshit and lies. So I did kind of just mostly stick to Wikipedia because it really didn't seem like there was a ton of trustworthy stuff that I
Yeah.
found.
What kind of bullshit and lies are you like the stuff that went on in the town? Because it's a pretty legendary place.
Yeah, stuff that was just built up to be a bit more cheesy. Like you could just tell. You
Yeah.
could just tell that it was being like, I don't know, built up to be more like legendary. It didn't sound real.
Yeah. I
And then
uh
it didn't, I couldn't verify it in other places. So
I commend you for that. Did I ever tell you about the Civil War memoir that I stopped reading?
no, I don't think so.
I read a Civil War memoir from somebody that was supposedly a soldier, and I stopped reading it because I just thought there's no way this is true. It's a story about how, like, in battle he got basically gutted open and his intestines were all over the ground, and like he picked them up and was holding them and walked 12 miles to the
Okay.
and I was like, there's no way. There's no way. Fuck this book is what I said.
Yeah.
I put it down and I stopped reading it. I said, I don't believe a word this man said.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if you get a feel for history. Obviously, if stuff sounds a bit too cheesy and cliche, it probably is.
Yeah, and I think that's it's interesting because part of that lore the stories that are real, or as far as we know are real, this, the period in history kind of has that sort of magic charm to it. Like it
Yeah,
was
definitely.
the time of legends and all of that.
Hmm.
But some of it is just, I mean, I don't know. You got to develop a good sense for it if you're going to dive into some of this stuff. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, the West and frontier stuff is like as close as America gets to having like a mythology. So
ooh,
you do see a lot of um, people just building it up bigger than it was, and or I don't know, like these people were just as stupid and like just big dumb assholes. Like there's nothing that great about
yeah.
any of these fucking people.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people reading reading through it, like a lot of people were they're pretty bad people. I mean, there's,
Yeah.
some pretty terrible things during this time.
Hmm.
So, good sense to have as you consume history. Um, when does Dodge City start to become famous?
Okay, so I don't really know exactly when, but it does start to become famous.
After 1872, we know that because we've made
Yeah,
it. We've made it to 1872.
we have. But so no town could really match its reputation as a true frontier settlement of the Old West at this time. So Dodge City had more famous and infamous gunfighters working at one time or another than any other town in the West, many of whom participated in the Dodge City War of 1883. Um, which we'll get into. It boasted also the usual array of saloons, gambling halls, and brothels, including the famous Long Branch Saloon and China Doll Brothel.
Man, they were they were trying to take
You
care of
know, standard stuff.
those rough frontiersmen back in the day.
Hmm. I think it's maybe because it was such like your buffalo hunts, your cattle drives. It was such like a dudes area.
Yeah,
Your soldiers. It wasn't people really trying to set up like homesteads and family life. It was just a bunch of guys,
it was. It was
a bunch of guys with no rules. Like that's
guys
what you got.
guys being dudes in like pretty harsh conditions.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So, the Long Branch Saloon, was built as a result of a wager between cowboys and soldiers playing ball.
Playing what?
What? Playing ball? I don't know. I think it was like some card game. I think I looked it up, but I don't
That's
remember the rules.
that sounds about right.
Um,
I've never heard of a card game called Ball, but I know like Dodge
it was
City was all about some card games.
it was okay, so like I don't even remember if it was called ball. Maybe I accidentally put that, but it was some card game. I honestly don't remember what it was called. It could have been called ball. Um, anyway, bets were placed, and if the Cowboys beat the soldiers agreed to provide building materials to construct a saloon. It was the scene of several altercations, shootouts, gunfights, and standoffs, often associated with cattle towns in the American Wild West. Um, Most famous was the 1879 Long Branch Saloon gunfight in which Frank Loving killed Levi Richardson. I don't know either of those people, but I don't know if you know more from your book.
These types of places were absolutely batshit crazy
Yeah.
back in the day. I mean, can you imagine? Well, I guess it is easy to imagine if you've ever been in a bar with a bunch of drunk dudes that are, that think they're tough. I'm just imagining like USA Sports Bar out here in Mount Juliet, and you see like the tempers flare and people want to fight. But back then, if you said the wrong thing to the wrong person, they just fucking pull out their gun and shoot you. And there were little to no consequences for it until, some people came to town that tried to clean it up.
Yeah, I mean, that seems obvious, just guys being dudes, and getting
Yeah.
drunk, and
So I'm like,
this is what
oh
you get.
gosh, I can't imagine living in that time when you just get shot for
No.
nothing. But then I think like, no, actually, I can see it because I've been to the sports bar down the road from me and seen people try to fight for no fucking reason at all. So
Well, yeah, I mean, it's no stretch of the imagination that this would happen.
like these are people that are getting off their shift at O'Charlie's that are coming to blow off steam. I can't imagine if you've been on like a 28-day cattle drive drinking nothing but the dust of the plains kind of mood you're in.
Yeah, and indigenous people trying to kill you as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What was the life expectancy back then? I don't know off the top of my head. I'm gonna see if I can Google that real quick. What we're
yeah, do it.
talking? We're talking 1870
Yeah, 1870s.
life expectancy. 1870s was. What do you wanna guess?
Well, what area are you talking about too? Because wouldn't it be different based on what country we're talking about? I mean,
White
can you Google?
population of the United States.
Okay. I-
1875.
I'm gonna guess 60.
43.
Oh, wow.
Man, I would be retirement aged if that was the case because
I
I'm
don't think you
approaching
retire. I don't think you get to
37.
retire back then.
That's not how it worked. They didn't have, a nice cushy 401k that 30 years old they get to ride off into the sunset.
No.
Damn, that's terrible. I take it back. I don't think I would want to live in prime Dodge City. I'd like to if I had a time traveling machine, aka just a time machine. If I had a time machine, I would want
Hmm.
to go back and visit Dodge City in its prime. Maybe just watch from the hills because I mean it really was the type of place that like if you're just walking down the fucking street, you might get caught by a stray bullet or somebody might stab you and take your pantaloons. But
Hey, well, you better be careful watching from the hills too. You got indigenous people out there. You got the frontier wars happening and the Indian wars.
yeah, you're right. Well, I can make friends in most situations. I feel like I'm a
Okay.
pretty laid back guy. I think I'd be all right. What if I, scalped a buffalo hunter? Would that could I prove myself that way? So this is we're talking
I don't
like
know. I don't know what like initiation would be.
I want to
You
I
know?
want to travel back in time to scalp a buffalo hunter so that I can befriend the indigenous people and just admire Dodge City in its prime from the hills. Also, I'm pretty sure there aren't hills in Dodge City.
Right. Yeah, you're just out on the plains
Maybe
watching
I
from
could
afar.
maybe I could just take a helicopter through the time machine with me too
Mm,
and just hover around
yeah.
the area.
Yeah, that sounds safe. Not going to cause any long lasting effects with that one.
Just hop out of a parachute. That's right. Hop out of a plane with a parachute.
You're just like floating from the sky with a fucking parachute on.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Good
I would
times.
never want to visit the West. I wouldn't. That's actually something I would never go to.
What if you had assurances you would remain 100% alive? You wouldn't want to at least see it?
No, it's
I
dirty. What? It's dirty. It fucking, I'm sure it smells like shit. Everybody's terrible.
They all got like brown teeth. Not that that's an
Everybody hates, everybody hates the natives. Everybody hates Irish people. Everybody hates black people. Everybody hates Asian people. Like it's fucking all, everybody hates women.
I think
No.
everybody hated everybody back then.
Yeah. And they smelled like shit and want to kill you. That doesn't sound great at all.
I mean, when you put it like that, no. I think it might have had a little romanticizing throughout the years.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean I like stories set in the West. Like they're fun. But realistically, no, it's probably like real far down on my list of places I would be willing to check out if I had a time machine.
I think if I could be 100% safe, if I could go in a bubble that nobody could get through, I think I'd enjoy it. Or if I could go with like an Iron Man suit or something like that.
Yeah.
Man, it I don't know. I would want to smell the town. I would want to feel the
Ugh.
heat in the air, to see the sweat, to hear the dialect, to see like what's it like hanging out in a bar with no air conditioning, and what kind of fucking whiskey are we drinking back then? Is it enough to put a cow to sleep? Like, what are we talking about here? That's all
Or
I'm
like
saying.
watered down garbage.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Mm, that still sounds terrible. Okay. So the Dodge City War of 1883 wasn't even like a traditional war, really.
Okay.
So one of the owners of the Long Branch Saloon, named Harris, was running for mayor. On
Hmm.
March 19th, 1883, a law and order group nominated Lawrence E. Degger to run against Harris. Oh, Dreger.
There we go.
Dreger.
Hmm.
Dreger won and then approved two ordinances against the Long Branch Saloon. I'm not really sure why there's not like a lot of info. Like, I kind of wonder if it was specifically against the Long Branch Saloon just out of spite because Harris was a saloon owner and, ran against him. I
Could have
kind of
been.
wondered that. Um, so the ordinances were for the suppression of vice and immorality within the city of Dodge City. This great Wikipedia article, like really quality shit you could find online about Dodge City. And the other one was define and punish vagrancy. Um, so a couple of sex workers from the saloon specifically were arrested, but there were still a bunch of other brothels still running.
Yeah.
So that didn't make sense. And then the other saloon or owner, I cannot read today, a man named Short and a policeman named Hartman got into a gunfight where neither was injured somehow.
Well,
Um,
maybe gunfights weren't so bad back in the day.
yeah, it's like maybe that old thing where you miss, you miss on purpose, sort of.
Yeah.
Like the founding fathers, like, oh, I'm calling you out, and then they just shoot at a tree or something. It's like, what's the fucking point of this?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
they're peacocking a little bit.
yeah. So then Short was arrested and escorted out of town. He came back with his buddies and deputized gunmen, which included White Earp
Hmm.
and Bat Masterson, who I don't know, but it
He
said that.
he was in that gang. I mean,
Yeah, he was.
he was a tough little bastard.
Okay. Um, Dreger had the saloon shut down, but he started getting pressure from the governor on losing out on money that the business brought in, especially during seasonal cattle drives. They eventually all met and settled their differences, and the saloon reopened. The event is best remembered because it produced one of the most iconic photos of Western gamblers and gunfighters who played roles in the history of the Wild West. Because it
Ooh.
was like some like group, right?
Yeah.
You remember that? Like they
Hmm.
were named like the Peaceful Treaty Law Group. I don't know, I just made that up, but
That's
it's like some photo.
I don't remember the photo.
No,
No, I don't. But
it's
I
on the Wikipedia page.
I remember that it exists. I'm confident.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this is just a me thing. I'm sorting through my brain live on the air right now. That's all
I'm
I'm
sure
saying.
it's probably in that book.
Yeah. So they saved the day.
Um, yeah, and that was kind of that's the Dodge City War of 1883, which was just it just seemed like some kind of petty shit specifically directed towards the Long Branch Saloon.
Yeah, but there
Um,
there were a lot of little incidents that happened throughout it Um, because there was like as the city grew, like there were people that were kind of like, maybe we should clean this up and make this more of a homestead. There was a certain
Yeah.
road in the town that like you didn't cross. If you cross that road, that's where they do all the gambling and the brothels and the
I did
shooting
see
and
stuff about
drinking
that.
and all that stuff. But it was kind of like there was a group that wanted to clean a lot of that stuff up, and then there were obviously all the guy bros that were still there that like, no, you're not taking our drinking, and you're not taking our fucking. We're gonna
I
keep
mean, it,
doing
it
this.
makes sense because, you have a group of people who wanted like more of a lawman
Yeah.
in there, and then he
Hmm.
was voted in. And then they're like,
Yeah.
okay, let's try and clean up the city. But still it seemed very directed towards just the one saloon. Like maybe we can make an example of them. Um, but even the governor was like, no, we need this money. So,
Yeah. And that period is where you do get the legends of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and Virgil Earp and Bat Masterson. I always want to say Bat Matterson for some reason. I don't know why.
Bat
But
Matt, I mean that it flows.
Bat Matterson, Bat Masterson. Yeah.
Yeah. I think some stuff came from it, like maybe like sort of a quiet time. Like
Yeah.
maybe there was certain hours and like, okay, well maybe we'll calm things down by a certain time. I don't know. I
Yeah.
kind of remember little things from it, but
They tried that, and then the saloons just ignored it and just kept
yeah, I'm
going. And then
sure.
it was another source of violence where, they're just dragging people out in the street and shooting them, or taking them out back and beating them to death and all that stuff. I mean,
That sounds nice.
it's just a really but this dynamic that
Who
we're
wouldn't
talking
want to
about,
visit that?
that doesn't interest you at all.
Why would it?
I don't know. It's just very. I'm just. I'm amazed at humans behaving this way. I guess.
Incredibly violently? I mean, there are lots of places you could go to still witness that if you really want to.
I know, but I don't. I don't know. I think it's the tall tales and the legends of the era that maybe have gotten into my head and permeated too much.
Yeah,
Maybe,
the myth of it all. Sure.
but it just. I don't know. I've always kind of just wanted to put myself in that situation and just be like,
There would probably be other towns I would be willing to visit, but it would not be Dodge City.
no, no, you've made that
I
abundantly clear.
I think it would have been cool to see like Chicago around this time.
I don't know much about Chicago in the 1870s.
Pretty big city. I know that you had the Pinkertons running out of Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Um, anyway. Let's see, where was I? Okay.
I was about to say, I lost our place, so.
So for a time in 1884, Dodge City even had bullfighting ring where Mexican bullfighters would put on a show with specially chosen longhorn bulls.
I, see, like, that's a fun Saturday night.
Well, I don't know. That sounds kind of neat, but that's different. Well, I don't want to watch them kill the bull though. That sucks.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Um, I've actually seen like an old the cattle going down a street, I think in Texas. I think maybe when I visited my dad, we went somewhere and they actually still had cattle walking through the street occasionally. That was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Just seeing a bunch of cows go down a
Yeah.
city street.
Were
That's pretty
they,
neat.
did you see any of the Longhorns?
Yeah, they were Longhorn. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen one in person.
Oh, I've been on the back of one too.
Oh my God.
Then it was somewhere else where this guy just had a really old Longhorn and people you give him money and he would let you sit on it and you could get a picture taken.
You are a frontiers woman.
So I got up. He was actually impressed by how I got up on it because he actually asked me if I rode, and I said, nope, not at all. Um, but yeah, it was very wide.
Yeah, they're big. They're big creatures.
Yeah. Um, anyway, so that's kind of neat. So, as more agricultural settlers moved into western Kansas, pressure increased on the Kansas state legislature to do something about splenic fever, which is also known as, I guess, anthrax. I don't know. I tried to look this up a little bit, like naturally occurring anthrax,
I've never heard of such a thing.
as like some kind of infection. I don't know. And then I got bored, so I stopped reading about it. It's not that interesting. Um, but yeah, I guess it was kind of a problem happening.
Splenic
Um,
fever?
yeah.
It's just your fever. Excuse me, it's just your spleen that gets the fever? Is that what anthrax
No,
does to you?
no, but people are stupid back then. What the
Yeah.
fuck do they know? They don't know shit. They're like, oh, I'm dying. My spleen's got a fever.
Oh God, my spleen's acting up. You know what? It feels about 10 degrees warmer than it ought to be.
Um, I just think it passed from maybe the cows like bad food not being cooked all the way and because like maybe they can get it through eating infected plants or something.
Oof.
I don't know.
I don't know if they even had plants in Dodge City.
Plants
Yeah.
like grass?
Yeah.
No?
I don't know.
Okay.
Just dirt.
um so consequently in 1885 the quarantine line was extended across the state and the Western Trail was all but shut down.
Damn.
By 1886, the cowboys, saloon keepers, gamblers, and brothel owners moved west to greener pastures, and Dodge City became a sleepy little town, much like other communities in western Kansas. Doc Holliday and White Earp went to Tombstone.
Yeah. It's really interesting that like they made it to the end of this thing and then they really did just kind of decide like, well, you know what? We did a good job here in Dodge City. Our work here is done. Let's on to the next town kind of deal. Um
Yeah, I guess law catching up to him too. People expanding, people like more, I mean, more families getting there, and then you have sickness breakout, and people are like, fuck it, we need to go somewhere where we can keep doing our thing.
yeah, so they just a lot of the old degenerates just kind of moved out west.
Yeah. And I've been to Tombstone, and it's a tiny little strip of
Yeah.
where stuff used to be in an otherwise like totally boring tiny town.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think, these early settlements in other places turned into cities today? What do you think it was about like the Dodge cities and the tombstones of the era that never, I don't know, never really developed?
Um, well, the places that got big, I think got big because expansion was huge. Like places like San Francisco, people are going to try and get gold. In
Yeah.
It stays relevant because it's still kind of an ideal spot. Then you have other industries coming up. Like
Mm.
you
Mm-hmm.
have like ports coming up and you have so many people there now that like it becomes a huge place, but it stays relevant. Whereas places like these, I think popped up because you have your soldiers there, you have your cattle runners there, or whatever the hell. But they don't really have anything else to keep them relevant other than places to hang out and do lawless bullshit. And then as it grows, I don't know, the guys who are there, the reason these towns are there, just don't have a purpose anymore.
Yeah. I could see that.
like the industries that are relevant to those towns are pretty much destroyed. I mean, it's not like we have brothels anymore except for Vegas, the Bunny Ranch or whatever it is.
Yeah. I also think I mean, maybe the conditions, I mean, it's not like it's paradise, you know? It's not like
No, there's nothing else there.
things are so bountiful that people just flock there to sustain a nice living. I mean,
Hmm.
at least in the case of Dodge City, I don't, maybe you can speak to Tombstone. I don't know much about its history, but I mean, Dodge City was not a very enriching place, and it was like from the jump kind of this place of violence and harsh living.
Yeah. I don't know that much about Tombstone. I imagine it's mostly the same. There's nothing fucking there. It's just like
Yeah.
a deserty ass little area. What's the point?
Mm. You've got a famous quote from the Hayes City Sentinel in here. I
Yeah, I
like.
thought this was a good one.
Yeah.
So the editor of the Hayes City Sentinel wrote after visiting Dodge City, um, Dodge is the Deadwood of Kansas. Her incorporated limits are the rendezvous of all the unemployed scalawagism in 7 states. Her principal business is polygamy without the sanction of religion. Her code of morals is the honor of thieves, and decency she knows not.
Yeah. That's it was one of those places that people outside of Dodge City hated Dodge City. It's kind of
I think it's
interesting.
also kind of fucked up. He's referring to it as her and she, whereas like that is a male city, sir. Get the fuck out of here.
Where did that start?
I don't
The
know.
practice of calling cities her and she. What I wonder where that, because you hear it sometimes like
Oh, well, because it's the motherland, you know?
the
You come
motherland.
from her womb. I remember like
Okay,
I
yeah.
don't know. I've heard about that shit because it was interesting that Hitler always referred to Germany as the fatherland.
Ooh, ooh, I did not know that.
Yeah. I don't remember why. I just remember that was something that came up in one of my classes. That was kind of interesting. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why people though refer to it. But it's like Dodge City. That's not the fucking motherland. She doesn't need to
No,
be
no,
a woman.
it's a town y'all made up to hunt buffaloes and play cards and shoot each other in. Dodge City might have been the birthplace of toxic masculinity.
I don't think that's true.
No?
I think that existed long before Dodge City.
So how about Dodge City today? What do you got for us?
Um, okay, so as of the 2020 census, the population of the city was 27,788 people, which is fucking tiny, I wrote.
That is tiny. I got to look up like
That's a lot less people than Grand Rapids has. I know that.
the population of Lebanon, Tennessee is 40,000 for context.
So it's half the size
Yeah.
of an already fairly decent small.
Yeah. That's again, that's what I get back to is that it just was this legendary place that just now is it's tiny.
Hmm.
I know they have a couple of museums in town, but that's about it.
It actually sounds kind of cool. So, like, located in and around the city are a number of historical sites, museums, and landmarks dedicated to its Old West heritage. The Boot Hill Museum, located downtown, contains thousands of artifacts and a variety of exhibits portraying the culture of the city's early years. I think so. Okay, the museum's larger exhibits actually have like Front Street, which is a partial reconstruction
Oh
of
shit.
downtown Dodge City as it existed in 1876, and like a reconstruction of even the Long Branch Saloon, with the Long Branch Variety Show and the Saratoga Saloon, the Hardesty House, a period typical home, the city's original Boot Hill Cemetery, and the Kansas Cowboy Hall of Fame. The Santa Fe Trail remains located 9 miles west of the city. There are preserved wagon tracks from a section of the Santa Fe Trail, and the old Fort Dodge is still there too, which is super small and unimpressive. I mean, it's just like a building.
Yeah. So would you go visit that?
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Okay. Because I
visited Tombstone, and that was pretty neat.
Yeah. I would. What's the trip from Nashville to Dodge City? I just closed out of my Chrome browser, of course. But I don't know. Like, I could never talk my wife into doing this. But that sounds pretty fascinating to me. I didn't know that they had reconstructions of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love reconstructions. I love seeing old buildings.
Oh God, it is a
or fake old buildings.
13 and a half hour drive. But you get to drive through Springfield, Missouri and Wichita, Kansas. So cross those cities off the bucket list. Well, that's all we got for Dodge City. It was a pretty wild place. Yep. You got any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, let's try this again. Remind our listeners of where they can find you on social media.
At Sobro Rooster on Twitter and Rooster Chase on Instagram.
There it is. And I am at Stoney Keeley on Twitter, at Sobros Network on all major social media platforms. You can check out all of our work at SobrosNetwork.com. All of our merch is up at SobrosShop.com. Support the team through Patreon and gain exclusive access to an exhaustive content library featuring hundreds of items of content, podcasts, videos, articles alike. It's all up there. $5 a month gets you instant access. That's patreon.com/Sobros Network. Subscribe to Phone It In on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify, wherever you take in your shows. We are out there in these internet streets, just like the peak of Dodge City. We ain't hard to find. Give us a rating and a review whenever you have a moment. That's how we get better, and we always want to be better for you guys. For the Cryptid Queen Rooster, I am Big Natural Stoney Keeley, and until next time, you stay classy, phoners.
Bye.